This is the fourth session of the Zoho CRM developer series. And in tonight's session, we'll be discussing the bulk read API and notification API. So before we get into tonight's session, let's just have a quick recap of what we covered in the previous sessions. So in the first session, we talked about the basics of an API, what Zoho CRM APIs are, the different categories of Zoho CRM APIs, how authorization is handled for these APIs using the OAuth 2.0 protocol, and we also discussed the various CRUD operations with examples. And in our next session, we discussed Zoho CRM's Python SDK, and we also discussed API credits. So with Python SDK, you can easily integrate your application with Zoho CRM, and you can use its helper classes to make API calls easily. And in credit calculation and concurrency, we discussed how API credits are calculated for every API call, and how concurrency and subconcurrency is handled, and how rate limiting is done for the APIs. And in the last session, which was the third session, we discussed Search API and Query API, that is a COQL API. And then we also discussed the differences between each of them and when to use Search and when to use COQL API. Now, coming to tonight's session, this is going to be our agenda. We'll be discussing the bulk read API and the notification API. And we'll also see how you can synchronize data between a legacy system and Zoho CRM using these two APIs. Now, coming to bulk read API, just like the name suggests, you can use this API when you have, you want to export a large amount of data. By large, I mean tens of thousands of data. Let's say you can ask, why can't I use get records, or why can't I use, COQL API? Get records and COQL records have a limitation of number of records that you can retrieve in an API call. With get records, you can retrieve a maximum of 200 records, and with COQL API, you can retrieve a maximum of 2000 records per API call. Let's say you have, large number of records. Let's say you have about 500,000 records. In that case, you'll be needing the bulk read API. So when you want to export data in a module in a single API call, then you could use the bulk read API. Another important point about the bulk read API is that it is an asynchronous API. By asynchronous, we mean that when you make the bulk read API call, you will not get the response immediately. A job will be scheduled in the background, and once the job is completed, you will be notified of the completion of the job in the callback URL that you have specified. Another advantage of using bulk read API is that just because you're dealing with a large volume of data, there is a possibility that you might want to filter out your records. So bulk read API also supports exporting data with or without filters. Like I said, you can retrieve up to 200,000 records per API call using this bulk read API, and you can fetch a maximum of 100 million records using this API. Now, how does it work? So like I said, this is an asynchronous API, which means we have to give the API time, to complete the job. So the first thing would be telling the system what kind of export you want to make. So first is you have to create a bulk read job. So in this, you'll be telling the system in the input body, you'll be describing what you want to export. For example, you could give the API name of the module from which you want to export records, and you could give the API names of the fields that you want in your response. For example, let's say there are about 50 fields in a module, but you want only 10 fields to be exported. So you could give the fields. And like I said, you can export data using filters. So let's say you want to export records only from a certain custom view. So that is, one of the criteria. So you could give the custom view ID there. And also, let's say you want to, apply a condition on a set of fields, and then the records that satisfy that criteria could only be exported. So all these things you could give in the create bulk read job. So because this is an asynchronous API, a job will be scheduled. So you could use the check job status API to check the status of the job, whether the job is completed or is still in progress, or if the job has failed. And then once the job is completed, if it's a successful job completion, then you would get a download link. So you get a download URL, and using the download URL, you can download the zip file. So the exported records would be in the zip file, either in the CSV format or an ICS format, depending on what you have given in the bulk read job. If you want to export the records in the events module, then you could do so as an ICS file. Let's just see with an example. So here, this is the Postman collection that I have forked here. So in Postman, you could simply search for Zoho CRM developer and you'd get our public collection. So you can fork this collection. Once you fork your collection, we have something of this folder structure. We have authorization and we have folders for different APIs. So here, for simplicity's sake, today I'm using self client. So the environment is already set here. And when you fork our collection, make sure to fork the environment also, so that all the variables that are required to make an API call are already there. So you have placeholders for all the variables. All you have to do is you have to give your client ID, client secret, and the authorization code. So here I have already set up my self client here. So I'll just show you how to generate a grant token. So this is the API console. So this is my self client, which I've created. So under the client secret tab, I have my client ID and client secret. And under generate code tab in the scope, I have to give the required scopes. So here for bulk read API, Zoho CRM bulk.read will be the scope. And because we'll be discussing notifications API as well, I have the scope Zoho CRM.notifications.all. And these are the other scopes that I might need. So I have the scopes here. I'm copying this and pasting it over here. So I have the scopes here and I'm choosing the duration. So this duration means here I've chosen 10 minutes, which means the grant token will be valid for 10 minutes, within which I have to generate my access and refresh tokens. So I'm given a scope description here. And then from the list of available portals, I'm choosing the environment for which I'll be generating the access and refresh token. So this is the grant token. Coming back to Postman, auth, generate access and refresh token. So this is the request. So in the request body, I'm giving my code here. Because this is a self client, it doesn't have a redirect URI. So as you can see, I have my access token, refresh token generated for the scope. And then I have my API domain, which means I'll be making the API calls to this domain. And then token type is bearer, which means this is an access token, expires in 3600 seconds, which is nothing but the expiry time of the access token, which is nothing but 1 hour. So under different folders, today we'll be explaining with the V6 APIs. So under bulk APIs, I have bulk read, and then I have the create bulk read job. So here, so in my request body, I have the callback URL here. So this callback URL is where I'll be notified upon successful job completion. So I have given my callback URL here, and the method is post. Now under query, I have the module object, which means I'll be exporting records from the contacts module. So this is the API name of the contacts module. And under fields array, I'm giving the fields that I want to export. So here I've given last. You can get the records of the parent module as well. So in contacts, accounts is a default system defined lookup field. So account name dot account name will give you the name of the account that the contact is associated with. Similarly, I want also the phone number of the account that the contact is associated with. So here I'm giving the field name account name dot phone. So these are the fields that I want to export, and then I want to export based on a criteria. So here I want to export only those records whose account is ABC. So I have an account called ABC. So I want to export only those records whose account is ABC. So under field, I have given the API name and then the comparator and the value. So we support a different a range of comparators. And in case you want to apply criteria on more than one field, you can definitely group them using the group array. And then we also have the group operators and or. So you can apply filters on more than one field here. So this is the input body that I've constructed for this API. Let's just hit send. So I have a 201 created response here, which means the job is added successfully. Like I said, this is an asynchronous API. So a job is added successfully. This ID gives me the job ID. So I'm copying this, and then I want to check the status of this job. So I have another API called the get bulk read job details. So here I have to give my job ID. and then I have the response here, which means the state is completed, which means my export is already completed. And then, like I said, you can retrieve a maximum of 200,000 records per API call. And then the number of records that match the criteria is 12 here. So I have the download URL, and more records denotes if there are more records to be retrieved. So here there are no more records, so the count is 12. So I have the download URL here. So what I can do is I can give my job ID here and then download the result. So I'm saving this response. I have the zip file here, and inside this zip file, I have the CSV. You can see I have about 12 records here. So this is the ID of the record in the contacts module, and these are the fields that I queried for in the input body. So I have the CSV file here. So, and I also said that we can, export records from a custom view. So for that, all you have to do is the input body is going to be the same. One change is that you'll be passing your CV ID over here. So this CV ID you can either get from the custom view metadata API, or you can get it from the UI. So I have again given the fields here. I have given a custom view ID. Again, when I hit send, a job will be scheduled. So what is the purpose of the callback URL? So I had given a callback URL here. So let's just see. This is the callback URL. As you can see, I have a notification here. So I have the job ID here. It says the operation read, which means I have exported records from Zoho CRM. Status completed, which means job is completed. Again, the query parameters that I have. So I had exported these fields from this module and over this criteria applied over this field. So file type is going to be CSV. And again, I have the result object here. So this is how notification is going to look like in your callback URL. So like I said, you have to create the job first, which means you have to initiate the bulk read job, and then you can check for job status. And then once the job is completed, you can download the result. Now, a few important things about bulk read API is that this is an asynchronous API, and this API consumes 50 API credits per API call. In every API call, you can retrieve a maximum of 200,000 records, which means in the first page, you get about 200,000 records. Let's say you want to fetch more than 200,000 records, then you can use pagination. You can change the value of page. So when you give page equal to 2, you will be able to retrieve records from the 200,000 first index up to 400,000. And then, like I said, you can retrieve a maximum of 100 million records using this API, which means the page parameter, the maximum value for the page parameter will be 500. Polling and callback options are supported in this API. So when do you have to use polling and callback? Let's say your logic is in such a way that your code starts execution, it initiates the bulk read job, and then your code waits until there is a response, until the job is completed. In that case, while your code is waiting, you can use the check job status API and you can poll for the status. So polling is supported. And let's say you have your code flow in such a way that after initiating the bulk read job, your code flow stops and then it restarts only when there is a job completion. So in that case, you can use the callback. And like I said, this API supports the dot operator to fetch parent modules data, and you can also fetch records from a custom view. And then let's say you have initiated a bulk read job for maybe 50, 60 times, so which means you can make up to 50 download requests in a 1-minute interval, which means you can use the download API up to 50 times in a 1-minute interval. And then once you have the zip file containing the CSV or the ICS file, you can be able to access it for a day after it is received, which means it is available for 24 hours. And a few points about the ICS file type is that when you export data in the form of an ICS file, you can fetch a maximum of 20,000 records per API call. And then when you're exporting records from the meetings or the events module, the fields attribute here is not supported. Whereas if you want to fetch records from the meetings module as a CSV file, then fields attribute is supported. So this concludes the bulk read API. Next is the notification API. So notification API, when do you have to use it? You can use notification API when you want to receive instant notifications about a change that has happened in your CRM data. For example, you have a deal that is about to be won. So in that case, you want to be notified as soon as the deal record is modified. So in that case, you can use the notification API. So similar to bulk read API, notification API also takes a callback, a notify URL. So whenever an event occurs in the Zoho CRM data and you've subscribed to receive notification, you would receive a notification in the notify URL. So you can get notified for operations like create, update, or delete. For example, let's take the deals example. So your a deal is going to be won very soon, and you're expecting it to be closed really soon. So in that case, you want to be notified. So what you can do is you can subscribe to the update operation, because the deal is already there, and whenever an update happens on the deal, you want to be notified. So you can subscribe to the update event here. And I talked about a deal being won very soon. So in that case, the major field that would be updated would be the stage field. So whatever stage the deal is in, it is going to be moved to closed one once it is won. So in that case, you can choose to be notified only when certain fields of the module are updated. So in that case, when you subscribe to the update operation, you could also apply criteria over field, which means whenever the stage value is updated, I want to be notified. So this is also possible using the notification API. So the different notification actions that we have are, you can subscribe to be notified upon any change. So that is the enable notifications, and then you can get the details of the notifications that you've subscribed to. You can update the details of notification. You can update a specific information, and you can also disable or unsubscribe to a notification, and then you can disable a specific notification. So let's just see this with an example in Postman. So again, I have the notification APIs here. And then under enable notifications, I'm going to be subscribing to a notification here. So here I'm creating a channel ID, which means I'm going to be listening to the notification coming from this channel. So under events, I've given deals.edit, which means I want to be notified whenever an edit action happens in the records of the deals module. So under notification condition, I've given field selection, which means in the deals module, under the for the field stage, whenever the stage field is updated, I want to be notified. So here deals is the API name of the deals module, and this ID is the deals modules ID. And again, under field, this is the API name of the stage field, and this is the ID of the field. Again, channel expiry, by default the channel is open for an hour, but you can extend it and make it active for 24 hours. So here I've given the channel expiry, and then this is the token. So you give the token here. So you get the you give the uh, channel ID and token, so that you get the same token and channel ID in the notify URL, which means when you get the, let's say, when you receive this token in the response, you can actually see that this is from this channel ID with this token. So this is for an identification purpose. And then this is a Boolean key return affected field values. So let's say you have subscribed to a notification and you want to know what fields were updated through the update action. So here I have given true, which means in the response, in the notify URL, I will have the affected field values returned to me in the form of an array. And then this is the notify URL on which you want to be notified whenever an event occurs in the module. So I have 201 created response. As you can see, this is the channel expiry, resource URI, resource ID. This is the resource name, and this is the channel ID. So here I have subscribed for deals.edit, and then based on the stage. So let's just go to the UI. So here I have a deal. So I'm going to edit this. So I'm going to edit the stage, and then I'm going to give it as negotiation/review. So this is an edit action. And here I have the notification here. So this is the server time, and these are the affected values. This is the record ID, which means this is the ID of the deal. You can see the ID of the deal here. So this deal was modified, and then Because stage was modified, the probability field also gets updated automatically. So I have modified the stage field. And then for the module deals, and this is the resource URI, and these are the IDs. Let's say more than one record is updated, then you get the affected record IDs in this array, and then the affected fields. So here for this record, the fields that were affected are stage and probability. And then the operation here, which means it says update, because I had subscribed for edit event, the operation type is update, which means the record was updated. And again, here I have the channel ID and then the token that I used when subscribing to the notification. Coming to update. So here for the same channel, I'm creating another event. I'm giving here deals.delete, and again I have the expiry token, return affected values, and the notify URL. Again, coming to patch. Even patch has the same body, but here I have changed the events here. So what the major difference between put and patch is that put persists whatever value you've given here, whereas patch appends this. So by persisting, I mean, when we subscribe for notifications in this channel earlier, I had given deals.edit. But when I made the put call, here I have given deals.delete, which means from this channel hereafter I will be notified only when a deal is deleted. So only deals.delete is persisted and deals.edit is deleted. But when it comes to patch, I have given leads.all here, which means earlier when I had subscribed, I had given deals.edit. So leads.all gets added to it. So whenever in this channel, whenever a deal is updated or a lead, any operation happens on the leads module, I'll be notified on both the events. So this is the major difference between put and patch. Simply put just replaces, put just persists whatever you've given here, whereas patch, it appends it. So this is the major difference between put and patch. So this is how you can use the notification API. Now coming to data synchronization. So let's say many times it happens so that you have data in a legacy system and also in Zoho CRM. Let's consider that your organization sells laptops. So you have products module in Zoho CRM and your sales team uses the products module, whereas your accounts team relies heavily on your legacy system. So it is our ultimate aim to maintain data sync between these two systems, which means you want your legacy system to always have the latest data that is there in CRM. So you can we can achieve this. So by data synchronization, we mean having a near real-time sync between two systems, and it also means a one-way data sync. So how can you achieve this using bulk read and notification APIs? So this is a simple flow diagram. So when I say, let's say we have a legacy system and we have Zoho CRM. So you want to sync data in the products module between these two systems. Let's say this is the initial sync, which means you're syncing it for the first time. So it's a no-brainer. You would use the bulk read API. So you'd initiate a job. You would, initiate a job for the products module, and you would want to export all the records that are there in Zoho CRM. And then you'd typically write a code that would, pass the CSV file, and then it would, push data into your legacy system. Now, like I said, bulk read API is an asynchronous API, which means a job is scheduled in the background and a job is running. In the meantime, while the job is still running, let's say there is a change in the products module. So the data that you have in your CSV will not be the most recent one in the products module in Zoho CRM. So to avoid any data loss or to avoid, pushing, an old data into a legacy system, you can use the notification API in conjunction with the bulk read API. So when you start your sync, what you can do is you can first subscribe to the channel using the notification API. So here it would typically mean you want to be notified whenever a product is edited or whenever a product is deleted. So in that case, it would be products.edit and let's say products.all. So a bulk read job is happening, and in the meantime, you have an update in one of the product records. So you would receive a notification in the notification URL. So this means this is the most recent record. So what you do is you have a code that simply pushes this data into your legacy system. So once you push this data into your legacy system, the one that is there in your legacy system will be the most recent one. So after the job is completed in your CSV, you might have the same product, you can compare the last modified time of both the records, the one in the legacy system and the one in the CSV. So whichever is the latest, you can push into the legacy system. Let's say the one in the CSV is not the most recent one, then you can choose to ignore it and only have the record with the latest modified time in your legacy system. So this is how you can maintain data sync between legacy system and Zoho CRM using these two APIs. So I'll just repeat this. So you want to maintain data sync between your legacy system and Zoho CRM. So when the job is still running, in case there is an update in the data in Zoho CRM, you don't want to miss out on this. So you use the notification API. So whenever there is a change, when the bulk read job is still running, there is a change in the data in Zoho CRM, then you'd get notified on the notify URL you have provided. So because this is the most recent record, you'd simply push it to the legacy system. And then once the bulk read job is completed, you get the CSV, and then you write a code that compares the records in the legacy system with the data in the CSV, and then you only push the records with the most recent modified time in your legacy system. So this is how you can maintain data sync between your legacy system and Zoho CRM using bulk read API and the notification API. So again, this is what the flow diagram explains. So here you're starting sync, you're subscribing to the channel, you also initiate a bulk read job. So once you have a notification, you push that data into your legacy system, and then once the job is completed, you compare the data in the CSV and the legacy system. Now, let's say you have performed sync one time. So for today, you're done syncing. It's the next day, and then there is a lot of a lot of products have been updated. Let's say if it's one or two products, you can easily manually update this in your DB. Let's say again a few hundred records are updated in Zoho CRM. So what you do is typically you'd again use the bulk read API. You'd again initialize a job. So what happens is here there is a possibility that all the previous records will also be a part of this CSV. So to avoid that, what you can do is in your legacy system, you can maintain something called the last synced time, which means the time that your data in the legacy system was synced with the data in Zoho CRM. So when you have this time, it means at this time, all the records that are there in your legacy system were the ones were the latest records in the Zoho CRM. So that is what it means. So when you initialize a bulk read job the next day, you can apply criteria over this last modified time. So in your criteria for bulk read job, you can simply give a time to export records that were created or modified after the last synced time in your legacy system. So this makes sure that you get all the new records that were updated after your after your data was synced between your legacy system and the Zoho CRM. So this is how you can achieve data synchronization. So like I said, I explained the flow diagram here. This is what I've given here. And a few things to note about data synchronization is that channel resubscription. So like I said, the channel is open for 1 hour by default, but you can keep it open for about 24 hours. So you have to make sure that you resubscribe to the channel before the 24-hour expiry period, so that because when notification when you don't get a notification, there is a chance that you might not have the latest data synced between the two systems. Again, you could also use this for troubleshooting. Let's say for whatever reason either your bulk read job fails, or the notify URL is not working, so you might not get a notification. In such cases, like I said, you can always use the last synced time in your legacy system. So when you save that last synced time, you could initiate again another bulk read job to filter records that were modified after the last synced time. So this way you can make sure that you don't miss out on any data, and you don't miss out on syncing the most recent data in Zoho CRM with your legacy system. So this brings us to the end of the presentation.